Hey everybody, Invisiblekatana here with my review for The Walking Dead Compendium number 3. Of course, with this being number 3, you guys can check out my review / discussions. They're fairly long videos for both Compendium 1 as well as 2. This is in celebration of the return of Free Comic Book Day, which is August 14th, Saturday, which will either be tomorrow or today, depending on when you're watching this. Otherwise, it's pointless because you missed it, unfortunately. But to celebrate, I was like, I'm going to go through The Walking Dead, reread 1, 2, and 3, and then finish up with Book 4. Which I actually did. I have finished 4, and so I'll be doing both those reviews today. And I'm very excited to get to that last one because all of that was brand new. This was a lot of interesting stuff going through it, of course. I mean, honestly, I can't even remember when I actually first read this thing. So I have all my little notes. This is much better. Taking all these little notes was way better than writing my super long list of notes like this. It was like, oh, I can actually go back to every individual little thing. So I figured that was a better way to do it. So for 3 and 4, this is how we have it. And then I can get rid of these little sticky notes. So without spoilers, it was great. It was really good. I would say that this is definitely like one of the most intense parts of the series. I would say Compendium 1 and then Compendium 3 are the two most intense moments of like the entire series. Negan gets introduced, like it's just absolute chaos. Like this whole like Compendium 3 is basically just pure chaos. Like it is just things go from bad to worse. And then it's like, okay, it's kind of picking up, and then it's like boom, it's hell again. It's really good. It's really entertaining to go through, and it's definitely some of the most tragic stuff in this. Not that 4 doesn't, have its moments for sure, but this is some crazy stuff for sure. So, kicking things off, we're going straight into spoilers now, so if you have not read it, I don't know why you're watching this, but either way, pick these up. They're great, and obviously they're huge. Lots to read through. This is issues 97 to 144. So, highly recommend you pick this up. I also love these covers, the flip covers. I should have mentioned that before in my last two, but I always think those are really cool, so I enjoy that. So, very first note right here. Unfortunately, this was the thing that I thought, if you watched my last video, I mentioned this. I thought Abraham died. I was kind of waiting for that in the last compendium, and I was wrong. I thought it was in Compendium 2, and it ends up being, that's probably like 20 or so pages into Compendium 3. Boom, Abraham is gone, and it was just, out of nowhere, they're just talking and walking, and it's just like, boop, he's dead, and that's it. And typically, when they show people in the background, it's like, oh, they've got, they're actually being spied on. Normally, they get captured, and then it's a conversation and some stuff. It was just like, nope, they just straight up killed him. And he was in the middle of talking with Eugene about Rosita and stuff like that, and it's just, boom, he just gets shot in the back of the head. And that was it. And Abraham's just gone. And I was like, I remember when I first read it, it was just like, wow, that was out of nowhere. Typically, when they die, they get like a full page, like, splash. And it was just like, nope, he actually dies in like the tiny... technically speaking, he dies in this little small panel right here, and then you get like the big panel there, and he's just talking the whole way through, and it's just like, this is effed up, and then he's gone, and that's it. Abraham is just dead. And so that was an interesting start, kick things off. And then of course, Negan arrives, and that's when things just get buck wild. It was already bad, and as they go through, actually I have a second note here. What is this? Oh, dick bite. Oh yeah, Eugene bit Dwight's dick. That was something. But Negan arrives. So, I actually like having these notes. It's funny. Just some of the notes are just dumb like that. But Negan arrives, and it just gets wild. And, of course, it gets really depressing. And, of course, the very next note I have is a couple pages later. But, obviously, Glenn dies. And that just sucked. And, like, just going through, it was just super messed up. Because it was like, Glenn was like, man, things are dangerous. I just want my family to get to the hilltop. And that's all he wanted. It was like, let's just go there now because I feel like the hilltop is a bit safer. We leave now. And let's just get the heck out of here. Let's go and let's live, pretty much. Like, let's just get the F out of here. And because he just wanted his family to get to safety, that's what ended up getting him killed. And that really sucked. And then I skipped a buttload of stuff until my next note after that. But Rick ends up playing the long game. So, of course, after that happens, things get a little wild. It's like they killed Glenn. They had nothing. And you see, like, the full totality, somewhat, close to it at least, of Negan's army. And it was really interesting where it's just like, this is what's going to happen. He's coming in, dropping F-bombs like every other page. It's him saying fuckity, fuck, or fucker. Something like that. It's somewhere in that realm. And it was just like, okay, this dude, like, he's not effing around. He is the new grandiose threat. He is the second stage of, the governor. Like, it was the governor, and then it became Negan. And it was just like, holy crap, this is buck wild. And so, of course, Rick has to end up blinding all these people, and he's like, hey, we're going to serve them, kind of just like the Hilltop does, as well as the Kingdom. And that's how it's going to be. We're going to give them half of our supplies, and that's what's going to happen. But then, of course, we have Jesus, and, Rick is like, all right, we can't let anybody know what's going on, but I need you to follow them so we know exactly what's happening. So Rick decides to play the long game, which I thought was pretty cool. And then my next note I actually have is the little pig line. So this is from Compendium 2. I didn't do my notes, so I probably wouldn't even be able to find it even if I tried. But the first time they got attacked, I'm pretty sure that's what the guy said when he came to the gate. It was like, little pig, let me in. I'm pretty sure that's what he said, and I could be wrong. And I didn't think to actually check that before this because I totally forgot I wrote that note. That was like 2 days ago when I first started rereading it. But it was really interesting. It doesn't matter. I think he said it though. When he first showed up, I'm pretty sure the random bald dude, who I totally thought was Negan in that last one because it was just like a bald guy. I forgot Negan wasn't bald. But I feel like he had the same facial structure. But I was like, I'm pretty sure that's exactly what the other guy said. And because they just happened to get to Alexandria because, the Saviors didn't know that it existed, this was a part of the Saviors and they happened to get to Alexandria. And then they all got killed off. So nobody got to report to Negan like, hey, we found this other community. It was just like, they don't really touch on that. But I thought it was interesting that he specifically said the little pig thing. I was like, I feel like that was tied back to them. It was just one of those references where it's like this very specific thing happens, but they don't actually touch on it within the story. And I only really remembered it because I'm kind of flying through everything. So then my next note, we have, I put Metal Gear Carl because this is the scene where Carl decided to sneak in the back with the assault rifle. And obviously that's a reference to Metal Gear, which I thought was super funny. And then the very next note that I have is Metal Gear Jesus, because Jesus was following Dwight and they caught him. But of course, Jesus is awesome, so he beat the F out of everybody and it was super cool. And then after they do catch him, they hit him in the back or whatever, he's in the truck and it's just like, oh, okay, this is what it's like, huh? And then there's like, oh man, there's a bunch of zombies. Where'd he go? And he's just gone. I'm like, that's why Jesus is cool. He's super sweet. So what do we have? I have the bandage comes off, so of course this is after Negan is like, hey, let me see what you got under there. Dramatic scene, he's crying, he does the where he asked him to sing, you have to sing, and that was kind of his punishment, and he sings You Are My Sunshine. So I was like, it's interesting, kind of going through it all, it's like, man, it's for everything is really current, kind of going through the story. Then of course we have Dwight. So they referenced it a couple times, and this was like the clearest one where you specifically see the woman that Dwight was with, and so of course they get the official rule, if you decide to be a wife of Negan, you can choose to go back voluntarily, but you're not allowed to cheat. And so clearly we get that reference, okay, this is exactly what happened with Dwight, where I'm sure they say her name, they probably don't at this point, but since it's just a full-on review, Sherry ended up going back to Dwight, and it just kind of screwed things up. So he kind of hates her, and for a decent reason. He probably should have left too, or just said, hey, don't do this. I don't know if he was the first person. That's kind of how they make it seem like he was the first person that ever happened to, and that's kind of how they made that rule, because there aren't any other. It's honestly, it's Dwight and then there's one dude, and that's it throughout the whole series that have the burnt faces. So I feel like Dwight was the first person that ever had that happen to him, and so technically that's where that rule came from. And it was just like, oh, you didn't know the rules would be that bad, but it's Negan. They probably should knew something was gonna happen. But that's the official reference there. Skipping over a buttload of stuff. We have the kingdom. We have Ezekiel. We have the tiger, which is just amazing. The king has arrived was the note that I put. And that's just cool. I mean, he had a tiger. Having read through it already, I knew that was coming. But it's like, he has a tiger. That's pretty sweet. And he also has his own sword as well, which I always thought was cool too. And then, of course, Rick confronts Dwight because we find out that Dwight was actually going to betray Negan. And he just so happened to go to the kingdom the same day. And so he hears everything Rick said and it's like, oh, hey, kind of same deal. I know I'm the one specifically who killed Abraham, but, I don't really like Negan either. And so, of course, back and forth. And then we have Rick wanting Carl to fight with him. I thought that was cool. Obviously, as things kind of progress throughout the series, that was a big part of the stories. It's the main character and then his son, the only person he has left is his son. And that was obviously a big point of contention between the two characters. I'm not just a kid anymore and, going through all this stuff. And so then you officially get to this point where Rick is like, I want you by my side. And that was a big moment. So I enjoyed that for sure. That was obviously worth noting because that was their constant back and forth all the time throughout the series. I'm not a kid. It was like, should I let him do this thing? Should I not let him do this thing? He trusted him when he was younger, for the gun stuff. But obviously as things kind of ramp up, it was always like, I don't want you to do this. Obviously Rick is constantly the one going out just like, I'm just going to go out and do this thing. Don't worry, I'll be back. Sometimes he comes back with one less hand. That's just how it goes. Rick just leaves and it is what it is. The swordsman meet was one of the things I meant. One of the things I put, I should say. So, of course, we got the swords clashing. It's like, okay, he's got a tiger. He's got a sword. He's also black. And that just seems to be the thing they do with Michonne. Is like, she's just with all the black people. It's like, she doesn't have to be, but I think there was somewhere, I don't think I actually wrote that down, but there was somewhere in here when they first got to Alexandria. That may have actually been in Compendium too, and I forgot to talk about it. They had a party, and like the first thing that the women were saying was like, they talked about Heath because he was black, and I was like, I think they did that on purpose, and like they show her face, and she's kind of annoyed. And I was like, like Heath is single. I'm like, that's super racist. Like she's always with the black people. But I thought that was funny when they did that in the party. And then we have Spencer has no guts. So of course, Negan shows up early, and it's like, oh well, we need the supplies. Spencer is like, hey, my mom died. My dad's dead, I think, at this point. Honestly, it's been a minute. I've been flying through this stuff so bad, I don't even remember where certain things take place. But I'm pretty sure they're all dead after this. And so Spencer's like, hey, I could lead. I am my father's son. So why don't we just, Rick, and I can take over. Everything will be good. All sorts of cooperation. You can't trust him. I know there's something going on. You just can't trust him. And Negan being the weird character that he is, where it could have just been like, sure, let me just get this dude out of the way and have someone else who is more subservient. That makes it easier on me. He's just like, nah. And then he stabs him and rips him open, and his guts spill out on the ground. And it's like, I'm a nice guy. Like he was super mad at Rick and stuff when he came up to him, like, what the F happened? And Negan's just Negan. He's really weird. So that's just Negan. He's a weird dude. Like he's super effing weird. Like I honestly don't understand this character. Even now, I've officially finished the series, and I'm just like, this dude was just weird. Like the stuff that he did. He was that crazy person. He was the murderer that had like a weird set of morals where it was like, that's not honorable. I'm gonna rip you open. Like he could have also let Spencer go and just told Rick like, hey, he wanted me to kind of just kill you off. He didn't. He could have done that conversation part without just being like, oh, okay, you have no guts. And then he rips him open, and then he jokes, it's like, oh, there are your guts all over the ground. Like this dude's real crazy in like the weirdest ways. It's interesting character, and he drops like 1,800 F-bombs. I'm sure there's some YouTube video, but the amount of ways he says fuck it's artistic, honestly. So then, of course, we get to the big battle where they officially go to the prison, like, hey, or I shouldn't say the prison, but the factory. I always think of the prison whenever I see the factory because of the actual fence and all that stuff. But it's like, hey, we're gonna fight you now. And so then he's like, I don't think you will. Here's Gregory, and Gregory is Gregory, and I put here, Hilltop needs a new leader. I forgot he didn't die here. I knew he was gone. I just forgot that that's not how he died. I think it was meant to be like he kicked him down. I just assumed he fell into like the crowd of zombies, and apparently that's not the case. And so then it goes through, and they have their battle, and then everybody's just shooting and doing this and doing that, and then it's like, what the F is happening? So they have an interesting plan. They're just shooting stuff up, and then they try to take off. And then Holly changes the plan up because Rick was supposed to go in, and he's like, he's not going to kill me because he doesn't want to make me a martyr, and that would just make everyone stronger. And Holly honestly, she just made a mistake. I am curious what the story would have been. Obviously, had Rick gone through. But it was interesting. She was like, I'm going to do this. Honestly, it seemed like she was doing it just because. She kind of just did it. And that's pretty much it. And like she mentioned how she's strong and stuff like that. And then she knees him in the nuts and takes the truck. And I was just like, I still don't really understand why she did that. She just did it. And honestly, it ended up just getting her killed. And also, technically, that ended up getting someone else killed later. Actually, that might be my next note. No, it's not. That's a different person that died. That's Eric. So that was unfortunate. And it was just one of those random things as they go through the war. And it's the start of Ezekiel, where he's kind of just doing his narration and talking about all the chaos that happened. And this was kind of the start of them just kind of going through and just showing. They only had like 2 characters personally that I can remember that were like important. Eric was the start, and it was just like boom, he's just dead, just shot in the head, and just brains gone, and that was it. And it was like Eric's just gone, and it was like, well, that blows. So obviously Aaron is alone, so that really sucked. And then of course we find out that it's Ezekiel kind of explaining the story. And they show that Shiva ends up fighting to the end, and he talks about how he wanted to do something, but there's nothing he could do, and it was just like, that's sad. They killed off the tiger. But it was an epic scene. Like this is a really good, that almost feels classic, even though I have that giant reflection. There you go. Helps a little bit. Pull it back. There we go. I just like how that looks. It's a really great, incredibly detailed drawing. Like they have so many like small little lines in there, so I really love that. It would have been great to see that as like a full page panel, but I thought that was really good. And of course, Ezekiel's going through. He lost a buttload of people, and everything's just super chaotic. Zombie Holly bit Denise, so that really sucked. And I like Denise. She was definitely cool, and it just got more chaotic from there because of course the next page, he got hit by a grenade because they're just chucking grenades over, and so it was just buck wild. Things just keep getting crazier and crazier. And then I have I put Lori. That is hilarious. That is not who that is. That is Maggie. But I put Lori leads, but I meant to put Maggie starts to lead. Like, she's officially leading the Hilltop. She ends up coming in to kind of help out with all the chaos. So I thought that was cool. I didn't even realize that when I wrote it. I just put Lori leads. That doesn't even make sense. Rick leaves the phone behind. I thought that was really cool. It was like, after all the chaos and everything, he realizes, like, there is no longer, he's officially with Andrea and all that stuff. And so he's like, I don't need the phone. Everything is good. Like, he just leaves the phone behind. And so it's that official next step for the character of him kind of just moving on. Eugene ends up killing the dude that was on the rooftop in the middle of the night. I thought that was an interesting scene because, that's not what he does. That's not really the part that he plays. But it was very cool. Then we have Carl understanding. I thought this was a really good moment. So this was after some dude died. I'm not going to lie to you. Some of the side people, I'm just like, they dead. But it led to a really great scene with Carl because Carl was the character, Dark Carl and all this other stuff. He went through a lot. He was a kid where it was just like I think I mentioned in my last video, his whole thing was just like, they're dead, get over it. That was like his big thing, was like, they're dead, you're weak, like what, like just move on. That was like his constant thing. And then we finally have a moment where he understands and he goes to talk to this kid, and it was like, and the line right here is, someone is going to tell you to get used to this. That feeling of being scared and sad. They're going to say it'll be better when you learn to ignore it. Don't listen to them. Hold on to it. Remember it. Don't let yourself forget it. It's too easy to lose. So I thought that was cool. And he says, I'm sorry your dad died. It wasn't, he's dead, move on. He actually finally got it. Like, I can't just tell people to move on. Like, you have to have the emotions of losing someone you cared about. It's not just meh, whatever. So I thought that was really cool. I enjoyed that little moment. Then we, of course, have the big battle. Rick and Negan, they're having their back and forth. Negan's like, oh, I'm starting to understand. Cool. And then Rick cuts him in the throat. I remember first reading that. I was like, oh, snap, he killed him, and it's over. And then it turned out it was like, no, we can still save him because he didn't cut him deep enough, and his leg was broken. And so he's like, and I remember when I first read this, I was so mad at Rick because I was like, this is the one time. Considering Negan as a character, I think that's why I was so intent about it. I was like, this was the one time he should have just looked out for himself. But he's trying to be like, this grandiose leader. And because of that, that's where I put Rick sacrifices his leg, because I knew he had to use the cane and stuff afterwards. And it was just really interesting when I was like, man, when I first read that, I was just like, I hated Negan so much. And I still do. Like, writing-wise, amazing character. I love how he's written. But as a person, he's just like the worst. Like, he could have just killed him, and it would have been like, okay, no big deal. But he was like, no, you save him first. And I was like, okay, I guess. It is what it is. So then, of course, we have our bit of a time skip. And then we have new Rick. So he's got the beard. He's got, like, the hair. He's basically, I think this is how he looks until, like, the end of the series, actually. So going from his little screaming moment where he has, like, kind of like the scraggly hair and the beard and stuff. And that was kind of holding on to his original series look, because he had the long hair pretty much the whole series. And then it was like, boom, new Rick, buzz cut. He basically had like the perfect old man look, where it was like the buzz cut, but it was connected to the beard and the mustache. Everything was just like even together. And I was like, that's like the classic, that's like quintessential old guy look, where it's just everything's just one thing. Especially seeing it in black and white is like, all I can imagine is like his hair's not gray yet, but I can tell it's like it's kind of just going gray and everything. Like, that's just what I see in my head just from looking at it. But this is the new Rick. He's got, the messed up legs, so he's got to use the cane. He's got the new shape on his face, and everything's just all shaped up and everything. And then, of course, he has a replacement. He's got the prosthetic arm. So it's kind of the new look of his character. And this was also the big time skip. I think they don't actually reference it in this. They kind of make it seem super vague, like it's been like a bit of time or whatever. But I think they actually mentioned in Compendium 4 that it's actually been like 3 years since they had the the fight against Negan. Like, things have actually been at peace for 3 straight years, and it was just like, that's just how it's been. Also, Magnus in this. I don't think I referenced that. I never wrote much about her character, but her group is in here. They show up. She comes more relevant kind of in Compendium 4, so Magnus shows up. For the Magna fans out there, she shows up. I know I skipped over that, but it's like, she's in there. Her group is there. But they do this big time skip. Like I said, I don't think they reference it in this. They don't. It's not until 4 where they said like a couple of times within a few pages, like, it's been like 3 years and stuff. And I was wondering while I was going through this, like, how long has it been exactly? I figured it was a couple of years because, of course, as we go through, Maggie has her son, and it's Herschel. So I was like, I could tell just from how big the kid was. I was like, I feel like it has to be like a 2 to 3 year old kid. So I assumed that it was a couple years, but they don't really specify it until Compendium 4. But it's been 3 years. The next note that I have here is that Andrea is officially mom, and I was like, okay, that's when the tide has turned. Like, things have officially changed. It's been time. They've had peace. They have bonded in ways that we don't know yet. So I thought that was really cool. Rick is not Rick, but Carl is like a young entrepreneur. He's doing like carvings and stuff to get sweatshirts and stuff like that. So I thought that was just funny. I put Rick, chill, because he lost his mind. This was like that classic thing where it's like, okay, he's the leader, he's doing this and doing that, and the dude was like, oh man, I must have kind of missed that zombie. That's on me, Mr. Grimes. He's Mr. Grimes now. He's the leader. And so he's like, I think there was a specific thing that he said that was just really funny to me. And so the guy's just like, yo, I come through, I didn't see anything when I heard the shots, and he's just like, get off your horse. And I was like, and here we go. And he just yells in this dude's face. He hits him with the cane, like quintessential old man. He hits him with the cane, and he's screaming, and it's like, this is the lifeblood of the community. Like, you are the art, you're the veins connecting the different communities together. Like, if you fail again, I'll have you reassigned and all this other stuff. And it's just like, this dude, it's so back and forth. Like, he's doing good things, and then he just snaps, and it's like, there's that darkness. So you need to relax a little bit there. And then we of course have the Whisperers. I put the Dead Speak because that was just a funny Star Wars reference. But the Whisperers are officially introduced, which I thought was so good when I first read into that. Also, I put Rick the Savior. Somebody said something here, and I forgot exactly what it was. Oh, I think it was just Maggie talking about how good he did, and it was just like, he's done all these amazing things, and it was just like, oh, he's Rick the Savior. Like, he literally defeated the Saviors and became like this pinnacle of success amongst all the different communities. He's the main character. He's the famous Rick Grimes. He's already there. So he's the living legend at this point, and it's really interesting. Like, people catch up to them in the rain. It's like, oh, I wanted to meet you and shake your hand. It's like, okay, cool. He's already at this really weird point, and he says that he doesn't like it, but then he has those moments where it's like, he's like, hey, get off your horse, and then he beats you in the head with, with his old man cane. So it was interesting kind of watching, Rick as a character through these moments. We finally get to see Sophia again as well. She punches Carl by mistake, of course, but I thought that was really fun. She even has like gloves on in the scene where she's fighting the kids, and I was just like, it's just funny because I think of like video games and anime as like every fighter character has like fighting gloves, and that's just what I thought of. I was like, Sophia the fighter. So I thought that was funny, but it was a good reintroduction to her character because I was just thinking, I was like, where is she? Because I didn't remember when she showed up, but I was like, where the F is Sophia? So that was cool. And then Jesus sends his love is what I put there, which I didn't realize how biblical that sounded. But he sent the letter to Alex because they had that moment where he was like, hey, can you read to me? He's like, don't think I don't know what you're trying to do. So they had a relationship, but he sends in the letter and is like, hey, I care about you or whatever, but I understand. So that was that. And then skipping a bunch of extra stuff, we're back to the Whispers. And so this was some dude whose name I totally can't remember. I'll probably remember when I get to Compendium 4 because he had more to do. He was just the dude trying to bang Maggie in this one, which he is for most of the series, admittedly. But the Whispers. So, he's like, oh crap, they're talking. So it's time for me to head back. Like, he actually ends up surviving. He runs back. And so he pulls off the mask and everything and is like, oh crap, this is legit. Like, things are getting a little buck wild out here. And so my next note skips over a bunch of important stuff, and I just wrote a funny note, and it was Rosita went to the streets because she cheated on Eugene, and I just thought that was worth noting, and it was a funny way to note that. And that wasn't, she's pregnant, and it was by someone else, and it's just like, that's super effed up. So there's that. And then we skip to Carl Rage. Those kids came back, they hit Carl in the back of the head with a brick, and then they were I assumed that they were going to kill Sophia. Honestly, the way that it seemed, it was like they hit him in the back. They didn't like kick him in the back of the head. They didn't push him down so he was like knocked out or like tackle him and punch him or a bunch. They hit him in the back of the head with a brick. And then they did jump Sophia. And so, he takes off and they're like, oh, he's not going to come back and save you. And he came back and saved her with the shovel and he beat the F out of them. And it's like, oh, okay. And he even thought he killed him. And then, that goes into that whole family. We'll get to them later, Argos. And so then we have the introduction of Lydia. And I put, she's really pretty, because the way they do it is they specifically go like, look at this pretty young girl. Like, she's so innocent. Like, they clearly make it seem like she's this pretty young girl. And it's just, like, pure innocence. Like, that's clearly how they made it look. And obviously she was super, I think she was only 16 in this. And it was like, oh, they clearly made it that way to just be like, you have these characters who, at this point, are like the grossest. I mean, so far they haven't done much outside of being super creepy and mixed in with zombies. Negan has still technically done crazier things, but it's like the pure aesthetic of these characters is that they wear the skin of zombies so that they can blend in. And so that aesthetic is like the worst we've seen. And then it's like, but here's this totally, this young pretty girl, and like that sense of innocence, I guess, like the aesthetic of innocence versus what the Whispers really are. And I thought that was a cool way to do it, because it was just like, who the F is this girl who kind of reminds me of Andrea a little bit, and I don't know if that was on purpose, but that wasn't the only time that happened. And the other time was, oddly enough, in Compendium 4, when she they show her later. I was almost about to spoil something very specific but later on they have another scene where she shows up, and I was like, she looks just like Andrea there. I feel like that's oddly on purpose, but it was interesting. I was like, I think they did that on purpose. Like, it's this young cute girl, and then everything that she's tied to is, like, physically at least, the worst stuff that we've seen so far within the series. Well, in a sense, like, then, like I said, walking around with zombie faces on and whatnot. So then we have Epic Carl, and this was the family of one of the boys. I don't remember which one. And they're like, you need to apologize and all this. And Carl was just like, he took a slight page from the Negan playbook and was like, you fucking fuckwads can go fuck yourselves. And that was great. It was a great Carl moment. And I hate that whole family. And that's all that needs to be said about that until a little bit later. And so then, of course, Carl passes the hat. I thought that was an interesting moment. And, it's like he had already transitioned past needing the hat at this point, and he was wearing the sunglasses and it was just him with his long hair and the glasses. And so then it was the transition of like, I needed this for protection at a certain time, and now I feel like you need it to kind of feel like you can move on from where you come from. So I thought that was a cool moment as well, and him passing on his father's hat. That was a big moment. And then it skips right to licking holes was the note that I had. And so Carl is told, like, you don't have to hide your wound and stuff behind the glasses. And Lydia's like, I think it's sexy. And she licks his eye hole, which is gross. And then she's like, have you had sex? And it's like, it's a weird way to start it, but they're kids. Everything's weird. And so then they bang on the hill. Good for Carl, I guess. And then Michonne pops up. Michonne the pirate. I think that was, Michonne the pirate. So she just left. She just left it was kind of effed up, which I think that's my next note, yeah. So we find out that Michonne was gone just because they have a reference to it early on in the book where Rick is like, even after everything that's happened, I miss Michonne. And it was like, oh, so there's some tension there. And then later we actually find out it wasn't tension in the fact that, like, they had some massive argument and she took off or anything. It was that she just left them. Just in the middle of the night, she just left them, left Ezekiel, like, just abandoned everybody just out of nowhere. And it was just like, what the F is happening? Like, why did she do that? So, I thought it was interesting. I like what they do to actually explain it kind of going forward later in this series, but it was interesting kind of having that where it's like she kind of just took off, and that was one of the things I forgot that happened. But she just took off, and it was one of those things, I don't know if I have a note later on, but there was definitely some stuff where I was just, I think that was the moment, like, when I reread that, where I was like, she's kind of a shitty person. Like, throughout most of the series, I think I've realized, like, Michonne is actually a real piece of shit as a person throughout, like, the whole series. Like, she comes in, she knows that Tyrese is with somebody, and she, she bangs him, like, she knows that that's a thing. And then as she goes through, like, when she's with Morgan, she's, like, super pissed that he's still upset. Like, her whole thing was, like, just blocking people off, and she did it in, like, the worst ways possible. She even mentions at one point that she's used to be known for making a scene. Like, she genuinely seemed like she was a real shitty person, and she continued that for a long time in the series. And it was like, it was something I didn't realize until I actually was reading through, where I was like, she's a super cool character. She uses a katana, which, as you can imagine, that's like, I love her for that. But she's a real shitty person. Like, just reading through it, especially all at one time, I was like, Michonne is like a actual piece of shit human being through a lot of his story. And it's in, like, simple ways, just like little stuff she does. And then abandoning everybody was one of those things where I was just like, wow, she's just kind of, like, when it was in the action, you could totally trust her. You could, like, when Abraham was alive, it was like Rick, Michonne, and Abraham were like the trio of strength within that community. And it's just like, yeah, she's 100%. That's her. Like, she's epic. She can survive on her own or with her. Like, she just lives. That's Michonne's thing. But man, she just did some stuff, and I was like, altogether, she seems like a piece of shit. And it was just interesting kind of feeling that way because I hadn't before. And like I said, just reading it all at one time, I was like, wow. Everything she does, I'll just be like, I don't really like her sometimes. But, you know, they go through and she explains it and everything. I was like, okay, I can understand why she did that. She just did it in a really, really crappy way that made her seem like a piece of shit. So it was like, okay. And, you know, Rick kind of explains it to her, like, you know, you have to, at some point, accept the fact that you're allowed to be happy. So, okay. We got that. Negan stays put. Simple. He could have got out. He didn't get out. Just to run through some of the rest of these. Gregory is hung. Whatever. Like, I think everyone hated him. He's written to be hated, and it was fine that he died. What is it? Oh, what is this word? Weaponized herd. So Rick has shown that the Whisperers have like a ridiculous amount of zombies, like thousands, and that's just crazy. It was really good, and I enjoyed that. And then we're gonna skip right to the end, and it just got crazy. So I got the whole list of the characters that died. So we have Luke, who's with Magnus' group. He's actually the only person that I think died from her group. And yeah, because there were only like 5. Yeah, so technically the other dude whose name I totally don't remember. So the 2 of them died, but Luke is taken by the Whisperers. Aaron, Carson, Ken, Amber, Beer Guy. I couldn't bother to go back and find out where they actually showed his name because it would have been like 40 pages back. So I was just like, I'm sorry. I was going to look for his name, but I was like, he's the Beer Guy. Oscar is killed. And then, of course, you have Tammy, Josh, Olivia, who I actually cared about this time, because I'll be honest, when I first read it, I didn't remember Olivia. But reading through the whole series super fast, I was like, I care a lot more about Olivia. Still a minor role compared to, you know, the next 2 people. But I was like, oh, I care more about Olivia. Josh, I actually remembered this time, because I'm like, I don't know who that is. But I was like, oh, I remember Josh now. Even though I think that's still in the same book. I just sucked last time. I actually remembered this time. So Josh, Olivia, and then of course you have Rosita as well as her unborn child, so that sucked. And then Ezekiel, they kind of played it where it was like, oh, is it going to be Michonne? But it ended up being King Ezekiel, and so Michonne does not get the opportunity to actually tell him how she feels, and he was literally leaving to kind of fight for her one last time, and that was super tragic. It was like, you know, that destroyed love again. But amazing Compendium 3, really enjoyed it. And of course that was the end of things before getting into 4, which was all new territory for me, so I was super amped. Like, honestly, I went through all of Compendium 4 in a day, which was today. This is technically Thursday, surprise. For me it is, but I couldn't wait. I was like, after I finished this, I was just super excited. I was like, how is this going to play out? What's going to end up happening? And I like flew through Compendium 4, and I really enjoyed it. So hopefully you guys will look forward to that. But I would love to know your thoughts on Compendium 3. All things Negan, him just in general, you know, like they had the crazy idea to be like, hey, we're going to stab the zombies so that when we stab people, they'll die anyway. We don't have to like cut them up or actually kill them. All we have to do is get like a little hit in, good to go. Excuse me. Genius idea, devilishly genius. But ultimately, they capture Negan, they win. Dwight takes over. You know, he's like, hey, everything's good. We're going away. And I thought it was interesting. And, you know, Dwight doesn't show up much in this, but he shows back up again in 4. After, you know, post-war, I should say, post-war saviors. But I thought it was really good. I really enjoyed this. Like I said, I think Negan was definitely like the true chaos of the series. You know, going, you know, it was like Governor, and then it was like Alexandria was good. They had some issues, but it was like ultimately, you know, it was kind of up and down. Everything was okay. There was hope. And then this one ends, and it's just like they went through all out war, literally. And then they get to the Whispers, and it ends on just like this devastating cliffhanger. Like, we just killed a buttload of your people. This is our territory. Could have just put the stakes in, didn't have to chop a bunch of heads off to do it, but they did anyway. And it's like, let's see what comes next. But thanks for checking this out. Once again, I know this was a long one. They pretty much all are, because we're going through all of the Compendium, which is ridiculously long. But I really enjoyed this one. I love 4, so you guys will see that when I get to it. All new content for me. But we'd love to know your thoughts on this section of the story, which starts off, well, we'll just say it starts where Abraham died. That from Abraham's death to the death of King Ezekiel and Rosita. I'll at least reference those 2 characters since we've known them for so long. Especially Rosita. That really sucked. I was like, dang, she was, you know, they didn't know, but it's just like, that's always the worst. And that's the second time they've done it in the series where they've killed someone and a child. So it's just like, dang, they just don't let anybody have it. It's just Maggie. But Compendium 3, real crazy. And then it ends crazy as well. So I would love to know your thoughts on this. You know, in general, so far going through 1, 2, and 3, I would love to know your favorite part of the series so far. For me, I would say going up to where the whispers are, I think my favorite part. That'd actually be tough. That'd actually be tough to say as far as like what's my favorite chunk of the story. It would probably would be with Negan, and I think that's just because it comes after such a lull with Alexandria and like they lose people and stuff like that. But going into the stuff with Negan, it's just like this dude's crazy. You know, the way he speaks in general is just like some of the weirdest crap ever. Like, okay, he's weird and crazy. I don't understand this, but it's entertaining to watch. So I think Negan would be my favorite part between 1, 2, and 3, and probably the whole. I think for most people, it might even with 4, it might be my favorite part in general, for sure. But we'd love to know your thoughts on it, so please put your comments down in the comment section below. Definitely check out my review for Compendium 4. I will also be doing reviews for some other stuff. Those will probably still be next week because I got so excited. I just ended up reading all Walking Dead by the time I finished this one. I just shot through 4, so I may or may not end up reading something else and having another review out this weekend. But as of now, those are going to be the 2 reviews for the weekend, the end of The Walking Dead. But thanks for checking this out. We'll love to know what comments you guys have, so please put them down in the comment section below. And of course, thanks for watching.